After we've had self-realization on the path to liberation, a lot of people ask, how do I fully assimilate the teachings? Now, there are secret texts and teachings that are there specifically for those who have gone beyond the pale of enlightenment. These are part of the Brahma Jnana, the knowledge of Brahman. They are there for you to assimilate the knowledge. Now, a lot of people don't know a lot of these texts. And if they do know these texts, a lot of people find these texts hard to understand and the teachings hard to assimilate. First of all, because they don't understand the text. Now, when we first want to learn about the non-dual reality of the world, Advaita, specifically in Vedanta, we come across the Prajna Trahi. Now, the Prajna Trahi are the basic fundamental teachings of Vedanta. And the Prajna Trahi are composed of the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Brahma Sutras. These three texts make up the core of the fundamental teachings of Vedanta and gives you an understanding of what we would call the Mahavakyas. Now, the Mahavakyas are the great sayings that come from the Upanishads, that come from the Vedas. And they are the confirmation that reality is one. In Sanskrit, Advaita, right? Advaita Vedanta. Now, these are the confirmation that it is one and that this concept of separation between you and I is actually a myth, an illusion. But the problem is that when we see these Mahavakyas or we contemplate on these Mahavakyas, a lot of us can't assimilate these Mahavakyas. Now, the four main Mahavakyas are Tattvamasi, meaning thou art that or that thou art. And we find this Mahavakya in the Chandogya Upanishad. Now, the second Mahavakya is Aham Brahman Asmi. Now, this is the confirmation that I am Brahman. This is what we would say in English. And so this is when the spiritual seeker has dissolved the ego and confirmed the nature of their existence is Brahman itself. Now, Brahman here, for those who don't know, means the ultimate reality of existence, the ultimate substratum that makes us one. So it's the fundamental consciousness at the core of our existence that we fundamentally are, but the ego gets in the way. And so this Mahavakya, I am Brahman, is that confirmation that the spiritual seeker has or are contemplating on that they are that. Now, we find this in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Now, the third Mahavakya is Prajnanam Brahma. Now, this means that Brahman is the highest and purest form of wisdom and intelligence. This is a higher form of knowledge not attained by reasoning. It's beyond that. It's the purest form of knowledge. It's a knowledge that everything is Brahman. That's what this Mahavakya is about. And we find this one in the Aitareya Upanishad. Now, the fourth Mahavakya is Ayam Atma Brahma. Now, this simply means the Atman is Brahman, or the self. Now, self here, or Atman, both mean undifferentiated consciousness. So that's the aspect of you that truly is you beyond the ego. It's not differentiated. It's not part of socialization. It is the undifferentiated aspect of you, and that is Brahman. That's what actually connects you as one with the entire substratum of the universe, the entire irreducible essence of the universe. And we find this one in the Mandukya Upanishad. And so these four Mahavakyas are what people find hard to contemplate on. They find it hard to assimilate these Mahavakyas. Now, these four Mahavakyas in particular are the ones that most of us should contemplate on when we've gone beyond the pale of self-realization, where we've woken up to the nature that reality is fundamentally one and separation actually doesn't exist. But in saying that, a lot of people find it hard to assimilate because we still find ourselves behaving badly, we still react to certain situations in a poor manner, and we find our mind getting still drawn into worldly drama and worldliness. And so we can't fully assimilate the teachings, even though we may contemplate the Mahavakyas. We may read the Prajna Trahi every day. We may contemplate the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Brahma Sutras, but we still can't assimilate the teachings. Now, this simply means that we are caught in one of two stages before the third stage that we need to move on. Now, the first stage is Shravana. Now, Shravana is listening to the sages, listening to the teachers, and reading and studying the scriptures, studying the Prajnatrahi, studying the Upanishads, studying the Bhagavad Gita and the Brahma Sutras, and deeply immersing yourself into those teachings. This is what Shravana is. Shravana is kind of absorbing yourself in that. And in a classical context, this is when people will go to stay at ashram and be absorbed in the teachings. They're in a process of Shravana, listening to the teachings, studying, but they should soon enough move on to Manana. Now, Manana is a stage of reflecting on the teachings. Now, this is a deep reflection on the teachings. It's not just whimsically contemplating the teachings. It's really immersing yourself in reflecting upon the teachings. Now, the problem is most spiritual seekers stay in one of two levels or stages. And this is why our self-realization doesn't go any further on the path of liberation. Even though we all know that the universe is fundamentally one, but we still can't let go of our jiva, our persona system, and we still act through that, and we still fragment reality into this and that, and so we suffer accordingly. And this is because we're not moving on to the next stage, and this is where the secret teachings and texts are found. Now, the next stage is what we would call as nididhyasana. Now, nididhyasana is the non-dual meditation on the Mahavakyas, or on that art thou, or thou art that. Now, this nididhyasana stage is necessary for Brahmagyana. Brahmagyana means the knowledge of Brahman, the knowledge of the ultimate substratum, the ultimate reality of existence that we all are a part of, and we actually are, but our jiva, our ego, so to speak, gets in the way of that understanding. So nididhyasana is that level. It is that non-dual meditation, contemplation, and absorption and assimilation of the teachings. Now, nididhyasana may frighten many on the path, because once you're absorbed in this is when the real work begins. It's not that you haven't done any work before that in the Shravana and Manana stage, but it's in nididhyasana that you start to peel the layers of your identity fully away, and you start to then feel this expansion in your consciousness, this opening of consciousness, which is actually just the downregulation of your jiva to allow Brahman to come forth, the ultimate reality. And so nididhyasana and the teachings and the text on this level may inspire some, but also may frighten others. Swami Sarvapriyananda said a beautiful thing once where he said, the nididhyasana texts are kind of like classical music. We can all listen to classical music and say, we like this. But those who know about classical music, know more about classical music, really know how to enjoy classical music. They can absorb themselves in classical music. They can feel and sense the subtlety in the music and the emotion in it. Now, nididhyasana is quite like that. Now, the secret texts of nididhyasana are few, and they are usually only for those who have gone beyond the pale of self-realization on the path of liberation. And a lot of you may have heard of these texts on my channel, but I don't usually teach a lot of them. That will be changing in the future. And the first text is the Ashtavakra Gita. Now, the Ashtavakra Gita is a lot of teachers' favorite text. Even Swami Sarvapriyananda once said that the Ashtavakra Gita is his favorite text. And again, this is a nididhyasana text. Another one is the Avadhuta Gita. Now, I would argue that this text is possibly better than the Ashtavakra Gita, because the Avadhuta Gita really pierces into the heart of getting rid of the ego and brings your awareness back into Brahman, a constant pulling back into Brahman. And ironically, when I was first studying Advaita Vedanta, when I was a wee grasshopper, one of the first texts I ever read was the Avadhuta Gita. And I probably wasn't ready to read the Avadhuta Gita because I had not even immersed myself in the Prajnatrahi. But for whatever reason, it made sense to me, the text. I don't know why, but the Avadhuta Gita completely made sense to me. And that may be the case for yourself as well. Even though the typical course of action is to study the Prajnatrahi, get to know the fundamentals of Vedanta first, and then move on to the nididhyasana text after you've contemplated on the basic teachings of Vedanta. And in part, there's a couple of other texts as well. The Tripura Rahasya is, in some sense, a nididhyasana text. It's a beautiful text. And some sections of the Yoga Vashishta are also nididhyasana. And I would throw on that also the Ribhu Gita as well. Even though the Ribhu Gita, it can be a little bit repetitive because it has the ancient stanza technology of trying to repeat and reinforce into your mind that you are that. So for us in the modern day, a lot of us don't like that repetitive sort of format. A lot of people will read the Nikayas of early Buddhism, which have that same way of reading to assimilate the teachings, but a lot of people don't resonate with that either, even though I enjoy those. But when we look at the other texts that I mentioned, the Ashtavakra Gita, the Avadhuta Gita, which are definitely the two core Nididhyasana texts, and if we look on the fringes where we have the Tripura Rasya and the Yoga Vashishta, all four of those texts are not really a repetitive stanza format. It's more poetic and can pierce you to your core nature, your Atman, to realize Brahman. And as Swami Sarvapriyananda said, when you read the Ashtavakra Gita, for example, and you can understand it and assimilate the teachings, you are like that person who can really enjoy classical music. You are ready for that. You're not still on the Shravana and Manana level of spiritual cultivation and training. You have fully immersed yourself in Nididhyasana. These Nididhyasana texts I'm going to unpack in future episodes. I'll begin with the Ashtavakra Gita. In future videos, we will cover the deeper elements of the Ashtavakra Gita and the Avadhuta Gita to understand Nididhyasana. And I just love sharing this knowledge with all of you because I know everyone on my channel are sincere about spirituality and the actual real deeper layers of Eastern spirituality, instead of a lot of, the warped teachings out there and say New Age teachings. You're really sincere and you want to learn the actual traditional knowledge. And so I love to share. And as I said, coming up in future videos, you'll see contemplations on different parts of the Ashtavakra Gita that we will contemplate and meditate upon, so that we all can abide in the ultimate level of spiritual realization, which is called Nididhyasana. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.